It's your brother VJ. Today I'm once again reviewing hip hop yasemzansi, the brother from the ancient mother. Now, every now and again, South Africa is blessed with rappers who have an uncanny ability of capturing the atmosphere yaselokishini in, like humorously packageable, bite-sized bits of explosive narration. I mean, the list is almost endless. Teta, of course, about the GOAT himself, Linda Mkhize. Sihamba siyogqabela sijikele sihambe siye KO. Squatter Camp, you name it. There has been a veritable source of rappers who have navigated around what we can, for now, until there's a better term, call Kasi rap. Rap for the Kasi by rappers who come from the Kasi. Now, the locations as a historical construct are pretty much labor reservation camps, which became sites of black pain, and wherever there's pain, there's a need to overcome it. And I think one of the things that the generation of the late 90s going into the generation that we're in right now has done is utilize the power of global syndication, us being in touch with the Black American experience, and filtering in messages that we feel related to us on our level, on our terms, in our own context. Now, what am I getting to? A brother by the name of Prince Shadow. I love his name. It's like very reminiscent of those classical days where as an MC you had a superhero-esque name. Like niggas would call themselves Catalyst, Renegade. They'd have these really, names that sound like they come out of the Marvel universe. So Prince Shadow is in that tradition of rappers who definitely have that backpack on them, who come from this instinct of rapping in the context of the cipher, and who, in seeing this great rich tradition of Kasi rap, jump and dive into kind of inventing themselves around the experience of Ubulogish. And rapping, of course, primarily in vernac, but interlacing it with enough English to allow it to kind of go outside of that context. So it is very much, when you talk about language, language in itself is a constant growing, developing construct. It is really difficult to say where does English begin and Tsotsital end. Where does Afrikaans start and where does Xhosa end? Really, the political idea of where language ends is a decision made by those in power. And I think in the power of language, it is very important for rappers to claim the language that comes organically from their environment. Whatever you want to call it, it really emanates from a place of effortlessness because it's your experience, it's your life. Prince Shadow as an MC, K1 Katlehong. Now when I say Katlehong, you might be thinking of the other great MC from K1, which is of course the man himself, Ukwesta. Now I want to draw a very interesting parallel here between those two MCs. Prince Shadow came into the scene famously as a kind of a hip-hop troll, with a track that really made the rounds of when you heard a rapper. And he used a sample by Monica where he basically gave us some of those street smart punches, delivering a kind of a morbid speech dedicated to his unfaithful girlfriend, or girlfriend who moved on. So I think in that he positioned himself as part of what a lot would call the culture of trend. And as we know with trends, they're very exciting when they come out, but the test of time is what determines if a trend truly becomes something more, a phenomenon. Is Prince Shadow a phenomenon? There's a lot of potential. The project is called Album 90% Done, and I think he's probably alluding to his actual album because this isn't much of an album. This is 5 songs and it's a breath it's a brief synopsis about a dude from Katlehong asserting his rap finesse, saying I'm here to dominate, saying I'm more than a trend, saying I'm here to linger on beyond that Twitter moment, and I deserve to be part of the game. Now he's roped up people like Omakwa, who are famous for kind of sculpting that slow-paced, almost like mid-tempo, drunk, hazy, gassy vibe that was created by Orquesta with songs like Ngudu. And it was really interesting because on songs like The Joke's on You, which basically opens up this project, you get a more classical feel of old school lyricism superimposed into kind of these trap 808s. Mans can rap for days. He's got a rapid flow, he's got humor, he's got those classical kasi rapper setups, punchlines and similes, more so metaphors. You know how I am dope, like I am as cool as Indonesian and Indonesian. And there's something about that kind of structure of rapping where it honestly sets an MC up to fail, because I think the algorithm of the things that have been said in the collective language of rap determine the kind of collective imagination rappers source from. And real great rappers are rappers who say, I don't want the lines that sound like the lines that have been said before. I don't want to go for the easy access, typical redundant bars. And Prince Shadow here is overwhelmed by a sense of always reaching for that. And I think it lowers the value of his rapping prowess. He, as an MC, if he dug a little deeper, if he wrote down a punchline and said to himself, does this sound like it's said before? It has been said before? Because if it does, then most likely it has in some way or the other. And kill that line. Go deeper. There's a need for MCs to go to uncharted waters. And I think it's these foreign lands of going into eccentrically weird metaphors, similes and punchlines that allow an MC the bravery to go into that very interesting place called novelty, newness, freshness, vitality, innovation. And I think his counterpart, or maybe his predecessor in the form of somebody like Kwesta, has set the mold. Kwesta comes from that tradition of that grimy, rough cypher rap, but he sophisticated himself into becoming South Africa's Kwaito nostalgia MC, who packages these clever little lines in the form of real slow, mellow, drunk anecdotes that fit into the context of Groove. And I think this album sounds like a cognitive dissonance. It sounds like an album that is trying to be two things. It's trying to be a kick in the door for asserting rap power, but it's also trying to be a kick in the door in the clubs. And I think it doesn't quite gel well, because where he tries to go into the root of the music for escape's sake, he relies on Kwesta's formula, which kind of really undercuts his own originality. Because on a lot of the songs that really define man's sense of creativity, songs like Dafula then come and dip it down, because he then uses Kwesta's manifesto. He uses Kwesta's approach, and him being from Katlehong makes it eerily more suspect and kind of disappointing. Maybe it's an ode, maybe it's just a younger rapper trying to fit into the mold of the closest thing to success that he sees around him, justifiably so. But what it does to the overall sound and direction of the project is that it places it in a place where he now sounds like a Kwesta wannabe. And if it wasn't for the tracks that really set him apart and kind of reflect his own unique thing, he would have totally lost his fan base here, or new people. So I think that his saving grace is the fact that he's talented as an MC. But again, another thing that kind of stabs the integrity of this project is the fact that a lot of these punchlines are circular. They are looped, redundant lines that we've all kind of heard before. And when I say we and all, I'm really here talking about a demographic of people who are used to listening to lyrics. I'm talking about backpackers themselves, people who relish in really dissecting an MC's lines. This is a rapper who raps really nice but won't really teach you anything new. This is a rapper who places himself as part of a tradition but doesn't forge his own. And ultimately, that's what the greats do. The greats create their own path from having worked with the masters. So album 90% done sounds more like style 90% done. Sounds more like originality 90% done. Sounds like maybe authenticity 90% done. And maybe he needs to work on that 10% to really break out into his own identity. But what I will say about this album is there are glimmers of something incredible. He trended for a reason. He trended because he can rap. He trended because he can do it well. And I feel now in the aftermath of that, it's dissolving into a test. It's dissolving into a challenge. Can Prince Shadow truly engulf the industry? Guess Twinzi Sake, as his name implies. Or is it a kind of a curse where he's bound to be overshadowed by the influences of his predecessors? On this project, I really say he was overshadowed by previous princes, and I think I would give it a 5 out of 10 because it really is a borderline attempt at something new. And I say that in a positive sense because from moments like these, there's great learning. There's great strength in learning the kind of limits that are holding you back from truly being great. Prince Shadow can rap his ass off, but he is rapping in circles. And when he comes out of that circle and configures something more infinite, configures something that others can follow, I think we'll be seeing something really interesting. And if you put them together with some of the most gifted Kasi rappers right now, Abanabafana no Touchline, I think you could have one of the most powerful movements that could do something really interesting for vernac rap up in Mzansi. It's been your brother from the ancient mother, VJ. SA Hip Hop for life, for death, for infinity. Mwah.